I'll read it out. Any tips and tricks for building a sense of community with new remote hires?
Yeah,
I'll open. Yeah, whoever wants to go first. Yeah.
I can take that. It's been a struggle for sure. When we have, even if the teams are remote, in person is very different from being fully remote. And especially if you're a junior hire, especially if this is your first job and you're remote, the challenges are a lot higher. You always need your mentor for even minutest, guiding principles like, hey, my build isn't working. And so we are, what we do is we create 30, 60, 90-day documents of what is expected in first 30 days, first 60 days, and we give dedicated mentors. If it's a junior engineer, then a senior engineer works very closely one-on-one, and they have, and we also adjust the workload of the mentors. We actually plan for that load. In my current former team, we double and triple the team. So we had to plan for that load that these people are going to be remote mentors. So what does that mean? Is it 5%, 10% of their time? If they're mentoring 2, 3 people, then it's probably up to 30% of their time. So, carve that out and have that plan for really helped. And detailed documentation about what is expected in first 30 days, what is expected in 60 days. And of course, Twitter has this fantastic new hire orientation program. The first week they learn about Twitter, they learn about HR systems. They also learn about Twitter systems in general, how to submit code, how to build code, how to test code. Same goes for managers and ICs. So they kind of come prepared the week 2, week 3. And then our engineers have this philosophy of, hey, let them submit at least one minor change in their first week to boost their confidence to go through the system. And then they work very closely with their remote mentors.
Okay, that sounds like quite a bunch of things. Shamil, how about you?
Yeah, what's fascinating to me is that there are a lot of similarities. And I know that sometimes within Bay Area startup culture, we talk about cargo culting, where people do a lot of the same things because there's a lot of shifting from personalities from company to company. And so, for instance, there are a lot of former Twitter employees at Stripe. And it doesn't surprise me at all that many of the things that happen at Twitter, we see a lot of similarities at Stripe. What I would say is different is that we understand, and this is to not say that Twitter doesn't, because I'm sure it's actually quite similar there at HackerRank and at other companies. And my partner works for Zillow. I know it, and I can hear Zillow conversation happening in the background here. Fortunately, you all can't because I'm using Crisp. But they're having a similar conversation in this moment in real time about candidate experience and new hire experience. And I think what we all have realized is that you can put structures in place. We're all engineers. And so structure and having sort of a set of practices, procedures, having a set of behaviors that are norms for us so that we can sort of manage the scale of growth. To Kavita's point, again, if your team is doubling or tripling in size, it's difficult to be idiosyncratic when you have so much change happening in the moment. But what I would argue is that all of our process is going to break. It's just going to break because things are not normal right now. And so one thing that happens to me quite frequently when I'm on video calls or video conferences now is that a little kid might run through my office door and start talking to everyone, which is great. And I love that child. But we all have to be, accommodating to the nature of the environment that we're operating in right now. So you put your best effort forward. All the things like it is a strong +1, right? Make sure if you can, and it makes sense for your culture, put together a 30, 60, 90. Make sure that you have an onboarding doc that's standardized regardless of level. Make sure you have an onboarding buddy, all the things that we do at Stripe. If you have, we internally call our process for folks spinning up with the code base dev start, and you get time and a team that you get to work on and issue PRs for real impactful work so that you can spin up. But what if you just happen to not have the time or feel like it's something that you can contribute to effectively? How do you have that conversation with your leaders? It's really incumbent upon you to make sure that both the candidate and the new hire have the very best possible experience. And you need to be doing frequent check-ins to make sure that you are centering whatever you're doing on that user, that person who is the candidate or the new hire. And so I would say that my strongest advice is be flexible and adaptable, and know that you're going to run into things that are going to be obtuse to your expectations.
Okay, so it may not be the same set of things that every new hire, remote hire needs. So just be in tune with what they're looking for and check in frequently. Sounds like, yeah. Okay, wonderful. That's great. Another question from the audience. So do you follow a different process when hiring remote managers versus ICs? Kavita, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. The process itself for ICs and managers is very different. We look for different things. ICs have a track, we have a career ladder. So it depends also on the levels of ICs. We had lots of conversations about, should we give them homework? Should we give them a coding test? It's still debatable, and it's now per team what they do. We have allowed slight diversions. If the team really wants to go and give them homework to evaluate their coding skills, we do that for junior levels. If you're hiring principal or senior staff, then it's more of a conversation. So you don't give them a homework and say that code. Of course, they are senior staff or principal at some company. Of course, they can code. They are technically strong. Then it's a conversation about what stage of career you're in. What are you looking for? What are are you a depth person? Are you a breadth person? What kind of stack? What kind of technology stack you want to work on? What kind of challenges do you want? Do you want business challenges? Do you want infrastructure challenges? And we kind of curate that experience. For managers, we emphasize a lot on people, leadership, and their experience of how they have built teams, how they have inherited teams, how they think about culture. So all of that is abstracted away from ICs. ICs definitely at senior level, you have to plan, you have to think about organization, you have to think at company level. So that's the overlap, but we do not have coding. We do some systems design for leaders and managers, but IC track is very technical. We do, even if they are senior staff or principal level, we do have we do have coding sessions, which for managers, we don't have that. So yeah, the process is different, and the skill sets we test for are also different.
Okay. Tramail, over to you.
Yeah, same. And I think I heard it in what Kavita was saying, though she didn't say it explicitly. I'm absolutely certain it's there. The common core for both ICs and managers is some adherence or seeing signal or seeing a reflection of our operating principles and how they comport themselves during the interview. So you've heard me talk about user centering a lot. And that's because one of the core operating principles for Stripe is putting users first. And so if you're in a coding exercise and you're having a conversation, because we do want to hear how you reason about what that coding exercise is asking you to do. And let's just say, for instance, you're talking about operating some service at scale. Having a good understanding of how that's impactful to a user and how that might implicate some of your trade-off and design decisions is something that we would see as a strong positive in the conversation. Similarly, and let's say that that's an IC. Similarly, for managers, if you're talking about the folks within your team and understanding that you should be centering your conversation on how to make their experience best, how to make sure that they're unblocked and productive and they feel supported, and that you're elevating their ambitions and that you are helping them to reason clearly. I'm using very deliberate language because this is the language of our operating principles. Those are the things that, even if you don't use the specific vernacular, we would look to see strong signal in how you, again, communicate and carry yourself during the course of those interviews. But very similar as far as design to what Kavita said.
So probing a little bit deeper on remote hiring of manager versus IC. What about the socialization aspect, right? The person needs to somehow, come into the team and get to know people and kind of manage them. So how do you deal with that? We'll stay with Tramail, and then we can move on to Kavita.
Yeah, it's quite frankly difficult. what we've done is give the team agency to feel comfortable having things like coffee chats in the morning, those one-to-one or team coffee chats. One of the things that my leadership team did recently is we played an online game together. We played Scribble.io, which if you don't know about that site, seek it out because it's really fun. You can play it in real time, and it's basically Pictionary online. But finding opportunities to do things where it's not just about the work. I mean, clearly we all are there for a reason to,
Right.
deliver whatever the functional core competency of your role is. But it's a community too, and building. I think to the point of the question, building towards community and culture and amplifying that in whatever way that you can in this, not normal of times is a challenge, and it's a challenge that leaders need to sort of dive headfirst into.
Wonderful. Okay, and Kavita, you have any thoughts on the socialization aspect for managers?
Especially in COVID times, everybody is feeling isolated. What we have done is we perform quarterly retros of how teams are feeling, and this was a common theme across all the teams that I operate, that the isolation and the social part has kind of disintegrated. So we have tried a bunch of things. A lot of my managers have tried having all-day hangouts where it's a water cooler hangout where you can just pop in and pop out. And there are some teams that do socialize lunches. So you get your lunch and just dial into a hangout and then just socialize and have meals with your team. Then we also we're trying out remote offsites where you're at home, but it's an offsite day. So you play games and then you have lunch. And then we tried something called as trivia games where we kind of curated trivia about the team members. And then we had to vote what is true, what is false. So that generated a lot of excitement and camaraderie in the teams. So we are constantly iterating on how to kind of make team socialize and also have that feeling that we are one team and we are in this, not just for work, but we also have that social feeling.
Those are great ideas, like remote offsite. That sounds like,
It was actually very successful.
Yeah.
Of course, managers went ahead and took a
Right.
survey. So they do want to do that quarterly.
Okay, very nice. I'll just add, like one of my teams uses Discord, which is like, they keep it on. They can just walk into a room and chat with somebody. So that's another idea. Okay, I'm going to take another one from the audience. So now that more companies are seeing benefits of remote due to being forced to do it because of COVID, what are some strategies for retaining current employees and not losing them to remote gigs? So Kavita, we'll stay with you.
So I think our retention strategies have not changed. People stay when they see their career grow. It's autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? So give them autonomy so that they are able to take independent decisions, remote or not remote, and they are learning about a domain or a skill they want to learn. They have meaning and purpose in their work. So all of this kind of goes beyond remote or on-site. So if you actually solve the core root of problem why people come to your company, come to your team, come to your org and stay and keep growing, keep learning, I think they will stay. So I do obsess a lot on whether all my org folks are growing. Are they doing meaningful work? Is it something that is advancing the business of the company? Are they getting, no matter what level, are they getting the right mentorship? Do they have the right people in the company that they're connected to? So I think remote or not remote, I think what changed is the social structure of the team, feeling that they belong somewhere. So once you feel like you're doing meaningful work and you're doing it with people you really like, people do stay. So we have the COVID has changed the social aspect and the belonging aspect of things. So we are going extra mile to do these hangouts and socials and trivia games and trying to know each other, especially if you're a remote employee and have joined the team or the org new, then we are going that extra mile to make them feel socially connected and to the team. So that is the only difference pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Okay, so you're going the extra mile to make sure that they're deeply engaged, and you're kind of filling the gap for the social isolation.
I used to do a lot more skip levels. Post COVID, I did a lot more skip levels and check-ins of, hey, is your manager checking with you more often? Are you connected to the team? Because a lot of things post COVID are kind of psychological. A lot of our team members are living alone, and work used to be the place where they went and met people and socially connected and had a life. So yeah, definitely we have to go that extra.
That's a great tip. Yeah. So you're doing more skip levels than you used to normally. Right?
Sure.
Okay. Wonderful. Tramil?
So again, I strongly agree with Kavita, and I know she's taking a break now, but stripe.com/jobs, Kavita, we should talk. In all seriousness, I think being meticulous about the foundations is something that's important as well. So as leaders, again, don't focus primarily on the functional output or productivity of the team. Think about it from a total rewards perspective. Kavita raises a very good point about isolation and loneliness, which could lead to depression or some of these invisible ailments that we don't really talk a lot about in the workplace. For leaders, it's now the time to challenge your norms and to really understand those things that you may have understood, but sort of put in the dark recesses of your mind because other things were present, or there were other things that supported an individual who might be struggling in a again, quote unquote, normal time. I would argue even in normal times, you probably should have been yourself investing in those things, in those practices. But I really do embrace this idea of operating principles because I believe it defines the culture and purpose of your organization. So one of the things that we talk about at Stripe is edit the company. And what that means essentially is when you see something that just doesn't make sense to you, especially given the circumstance or we're all talking about complex systems, and the way that you deal with complex systems and complexity in general is you isolate down to something that is you can reason about and that you can put constraints around. And so let's take, for example, everything's remote now. At least that's the sort of tagline that we have. And so if you're centering your conversations on having people be in Seattle or be in San Francisco or be in Denver or be in a geolocation,
right?
Ask yourself why. Like why is that important? Yes, there are tax implications. Yes, there are time zone conversations. Yes, if you have a more dispersed and distributed organization, there might be some inherent complexities therein, but for the individuals, again, centering your conversation on the user, your employees, that might want to be closer to their family and then thereby be that much more productive because they feel comfortable and safe being in an environment that they understand and that they feel that they have some control over, as opposed to being in an apartment by themselves all day. Have a deep conversation with maybe my people team or HR team about how can we make that happen? How can we support people being, if we want to take the leap into fully remote, truly fully remote? And I would just support and hope that, and encourage, quite frankly, the leaders who are listening today, that if their companies are doing things obtuse to the nature of the environment and what we see as constraints that are potentially impactful in people's lives, that we challenge the process if we need to, and model the way towards making a better, more stable environment that supports those ambitions and supports giving people autonomy and giving them purpose and driving them to doing better work.
That's great. That's great. So staying on retention, I have a follow-up question on that. What's the role of learning, development, and possibly mobility inside the organization? What are you seeing, and how are you going about, making that happen for your developers? Camille, you want to take that first?
Yeah, I can break the ice on this one. This is one that is near and dear to my heart. So I want to acknowledge our privilege first. So Stripe is a rapidly growing enterprise. We still refer to ourselves as a startup, but we're probably too large to be a traditional startup. And I think that's part of the humble nature of Stripe. Suffice to say, though, that we believe in high mobility. After 12 months in a role, assuming that you are calibrating well, and quite frankly, calibration in this time is a different type of conversation, because we understand that we need to afford the space to have conversations around, well, maybe a person is only able to bring 80% of themselves right now because of the nature of the environment
That's
around them.
interesting.
And so, but let's be a little lenient on what those calibration ratings, quote unquote, might be. But again, driving more towards the point of mobility, if there is a role that better suits what you're interested in the moment, or the thing that you want to do for your career, or if you want to experiment with the pendulum swing between being an individual contributor. I apologize earlier, I used IC and didn't define that as individual contributor. Or maybe trying management. How do you know that management is something that you're good at, or something that you could be good at, unless you actually try it, right?
Right.
You can't, especially as
Yeah. Yeah.
an engineering manager. And so creating the space for that type of experimentation, and giving people the space to also fail, and be okay with failure, because failure leads to learning, and to durable learning, right? Then I think you're probably doing more of the right sort of thing than things that are going to be, they're going to add friction to growth and retention, as we were speaking to earlier. But again, I started by saying recognizing the privilege of the company that I'm in. We also have to be, quite frank about the fact that there are reductions in force and all sorts of, issues happening within the environment, where people are quite frankly losing their jobs, or where companies are curtailing parts of their organization and focusing on those things that can grow within this environment. And so I think as leaders, it's also important to focus and center again on that employee, on that user, and help them grow in a way that it's best for them. So I would never want anyone to leave my team. I would never want them to leave Stripe. But if it's better for them and their situation that they are in a different organization in order to grow and to feel comfortable and to do what they need for their life and the way that they want to live it, then it's my responsibility to support them in that motion. So, leaders have tough jobs, probably some of the most difficult jobs, and you have to have conversations with yourselves, with the people that you support, and with the leadership teams that are part of your quote unquote first team, about what the best things to do are. And sometimes those things are a bit counterintuitive, but if you think about sort of global optimization of the outcomes that you're looking for, helping people to reach their goals, helping to support them and to sustain your community, your larger community, and the environment and the industry, then I think those lead to better decisions ultimately.
That's quite interesting. It sounds very compelling. For like, if you're giving all those opportunities to an engineer, it would be very hard to make the choice to go somewhere else. But I also love the global optimization, the global perspective that you're bringing to that. Kavitha, your thoughts on that, on learning and development and mobility inside the organization?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in actually people switching teams. Huge. Even if you consider my Twitter experience, I was in consumer before I joined ads infrastructure. This cross mobility gives deep insights. You learn certain things. You also form relationships. So next time ads want something from consumer, you already have those relationships.
Right.
So that really becomes like a strong point. You understand how two orgs operate. You can actually say that, hey, these are the things that the other org did that I think we should cross pollinate. I've had engineers from my org go to different parts of the company, and they bring in the learnings, and they also have that back channel to me. I always keep in touch with my Rockstar employees wherever they go. I always check in with them, and I learn from them. Hey, we should take this back, and they continue the ongoing mentorship. So I'm a huge fan of internal mobility. It's a win-win situation for the org, the whole company. It's a win-win situation for individual orgs and teams, and also for the employees. It's so much better that the employee does not leave the company and keeps growing and keeps giving back.
Right.
And keeps mentoring than just like asking them to just stay in your team. It's just even when I worked at Google, I think Google was at some point I joined early Google. They had the principle that 18 months is a good sweet spot where you have ramped up on a system and delivered for 12 months, and then at that point you should seriously think about moving to another team. So it was a norm. So at Google also have switch teams, and I'm a huge believer in that. Yes, it creates some stress on the leaders because they are under pressure for delivery and advancing business and launching the features that customer wants. But it's also like you also have to create a culture where people want to join your team. I have had many people from across the company seek out ads infrastructure because the business impact that ads has, and then the revenue impact that it has, and then the distributed systems. Very few teams actually very few companies in this world can give you the scale at which certain teams operate. So the scale is the attractive factor. So you also have to make sure that your org and your teams have that carrot that other people in other orgs and other teams would want to join, because these are the skills, hard skills that they will learn by joining your team. And you should be always supportive if any of your employees want to join other teams because of that feedback loop. And it's really for the company, really good for the company.
Great, thank you. I think both of you have this very nice global perspective. Focus on the employee, make sure that they are successful in their career and maintain relationships with them. It sounds like this is much more important also in this remote, socially isolated environment, where as a manager, if you're creating those opportunities for your developers, for your employees, they're going to be much more likely to stay with you as opposed to go off to some new thing, right? I think there's the other side, like going into a brand new company in this environment is hard for the employees. So if you can embrace them, keep them with you, that it increases the chance that they stay, right? Yeah, wonderful. We'll move to another question from the audience. How do you feel about take-home assignments as part of the recruiting process? And as HackRank, but I didn't put that question. I didn't ask anyone to do that. But how do you feel about take-home assignments as part of the recruiting process? Where do they fit? And what are some pitfalls around this? So Kavita, we'll stay with you.
Yeah, actually, we've had multiple debates about take home, especially if you're a leader and you're asked to like double, triple your team. And the volume of the candidates is so large. And if you say you're hiring 10 to 20 junior Swedes, how do you kind of deal with that volume, right? If you have to hire them over a period of quarter. So we have embraced the fact that we are open to sending them take home, and it's a great filter. Because any engineer that joins, they have to know how to code. And that's a great way to filter whether their code is properly structured, it's abstracted, it's efficient, it's readable. So it's a good first filter. But we've also had cases where the take home was aced, and when they come on site, it's just either they are different people or they just weren't calibrated, or we were just surprised by their remote on-site performance. So it's a double-edged sword. And also senior level candidates. I was recently hiring a principal engineer, and so for senior level ICs, we curate the experience, because after spending 20-25 years in the career, they know what they want. They know what challenges they want to. They've already mastered something. They are, so it's either breadth or depth, or they are specialized in certain things. They are either distributed system specialties, or they are machine learning experts. So they've spent last decade or two in that field. So we have to curate a panel. We have to have experts in that panel. So we do not, we kind of stay away from take home for really specialized, really experienced people. At that point, it becomes a conversation of where do you see your career, and here are all the opportunities at Twitter as a company, and these are the hiring managers that are hiring at that level. What is the best fit? And then we go on to the interview, and we carefully select the panelist for those interviews. But for more junior candidates, we are more open to giving the take home, and we found a great value in early filtering.
Okay, and just building on that before I move over to Tramel, how do you do the remote on-site at this time? Like, how's that working? Like the virtual on-site that needs, what tools are you using there?
Is that me?
Yes, Kavita. Yeah, just continuing with you. Yeah.
We definitely use HackerRank, we use Whiteboard, but we have had good success by sending. We actually did send an iPad and a pencil. So the whiteboarding that happens from an iPad and pencil was the feedback that we got was way higher quality. But people really like the hacker rank and the whiteboard. They use their mouse. We have had no problems using that. And obviously the panelists use a Slack channel and Google Doc to kind of do the real-time communication, real-time feedback about, hey, in my interview I missed these signals, can we also gather additional signals about either it might be technical, coding, engineering, systems design, leadership. So we kind of have that active communications going behind the scene.
Great. Okay, Tramel, over to you.
Yeah. So, and I'll interweave perhaps both questions into my response here quickly. Personally, I am still sort of on the fence on take homes because it's work, and it's work that's not compensated for, and there's an expectation that I think is connoted in the motion of, here, go take this thing and work on it for what, the 6 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, how long are you expected to work on it, and then bring it back to me. And I think it puts, again, this is my personal opinion, that it puts undue stress on certain individuals, and for certain types of individuals who might be marginalized or underrepresented, it puts them in sometimes peculiar positions, and we can have an entire conversation about that and the differences that are implicated in it. Now, from an organizational perspective, we do experiment. So the vast majority of our interviews are real time, and they are that way because, and you can read about the Stripe interview process on Glassdoor, and you don't even have to read on Glassdoor because we tell you about it if you're coming in an interview. We literally tell you every single thing. And it's, one of our tools, one of the things in our toolkit is to expose the entire process to you, so that you're not so worried about the particulars of the scaffolding, but that you're really worried about, or that you're focused on the work and how you present and how you show up as, if it's an individual contributor, an engineer, or if it's a leadership role as a leader of people or a leader of a business area. And so one of the things that we're experimenting with right now is, we, again, as I mentioned, are a very strong writing culture. We write first, and we start every meeting by reading some artifact that was written and has tons of comments in it. And so when we thought about that, and especially for leadership candidates, how we might incorporate that into getting signal on how well they would fit into a culture that is really about reasoning clearly and being meticulous about the foundations and thinking about things from first principles. What we resolved was, okay, maybe we do want to introduce a writing sample and give those candidates, that shape of candidate, the time to reason through that written piece before they give it to us to read and have a conversation about. So we're literally trying that right now with a certain segment of leadership candidates, and like anything that you would want to reason clearly about, we're looking to iterate on that process and get feedback, and to see if it leads to better candidate outcomes. And I would say the only thing additive to, again, what Kavita said, is really being diligent about those candidate outcomes, like getting feedback from the candidate and understanding, was this something that felt like you were able to show your best work? Was it that felt comfortable for you in having the conversation? Did you feel like you were allotted enough time, or did it feel like you were asked for too much time? Asking those really tough questions and then iterating through your process. I think iteration, as I mentioned earlier, with flexibility and agility, are all things that we need in this space. We use, as far as tools are concerned, Zoom, CoderPad. Basically, those are the only two things that have been added to the Stripe process, because the Stripe process has, from its inception, been really all about you working with us, not showing us a performative version of yourself. So it's more in an interview.
So it sounds like both of you have a very highly curated sort of process that is sort of made to fit the candidate and make them feel like they're doing their normal work as opposed to just performing for the interview, right? Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. We're almost at time here, but I want to build on that a little bit more. Both of you have referred to signals quite a few times in this conversation. And my question to you is, how do you record those signals? And how do you record the fact that, is the fidelity in this signal or not? Like, what are you doing? I know it's very implicit in many, many organizations, but what are you guys doing about that?
So we have
Camille, you want to go? Kavita, go for it. Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, we have a very standardized process at this point. If it's an IC, we map the interviews to the to the career ladder. The candidate has to be good in coding, engineering, systems design, and then some interpersonal culture. We don't call it culture fit, but we go through their experience and make sure that they will be good fit for Twitter values. It's more about values fit than culture fit. And then, we definitely have in-depth discussion about what each person, what each slot covered, and what are the signals. As in, here's what we learned about the candidate. Here are their strengths. Here are their areas of improvement, and how we can manage the areas of improvement. Are they blockers? Are they non-blockers? Will they be successful in when they join the team? Will they be successful? How much ramp up time would be required? Is it a domain switch for them, or are they expert in that domain? So there's a lot of discussion that goes on. There's a comprehensive documentation. We just don't jump to a conclusion.
Okay.
Yeah. So
how's that changed in the remote setting? Has it become more important in the remote setting?
I don't think it's changed much. We do test for values, but as an on-site, like in remote, if we are missing some of the signals, we do make sure to kind of either communicate with the panel to make sure that the signals are, the next slot covers those questions so that the signals are covered. We have also gone ahead and done additional interviews in some cases.
Okay.
If the consensus or the hiring hurdle decision was pretty mixed.
Okay. And Tramil, over to you.
Yeah, and I can answer this rather quickly. So we do high fidelity, high bandwidth interviews. Interviewers are trained in that they have to basically become calibrated before they're allowed to run an interview on their own. That means that they have a shadow. Someone who's well calibrated will watch them interview, give them feedback, and then they have a reverse shadow where they, so the opposite of that, they get to watch a calibrated interview first, and then they're watched and given feedback. And once it's agreed that they are calibrated, they are allowed to interview on their own. The interview on their own has a standard rubric, and that rubric gives explicitly the signal that we are looking for, and then a rating scale for signals that make themselves apparent during the course of the interview. And so the hope there is that we remove as much bias as possible and hire for talent, aptitude, and things that comport to the functional needs of the role. And then the final thing I'll say is that that bias point is really important. Every interviewer, every employee at Spread goes through anti-bias, anti-harassment training to make sure that they are able to identify and call out bias when they see it occurring, be it an interview or anywhere else.
Yeah.
Great, thank you for that, Tramil. I think Mustafa is going to talk about it as well as I hand over to him, but we are having a HackRank main event on October 6th, and we're going to be launching a developer skills platform, which is all about these signals. So I encourage you and everyone who